Welcome. This is going to be the story of the kid that I have on my channel, the 13-year-old that's pretty good. I'll link the video down in the description. And I want to tell a story because I think it's fairly interesting. And I want to start with the father. So I met this kid. He was probably about 9 years old, maybe 10 years old when I met him. And the father was interesting. He was a military guy. He was in the Marines, and then he had some kind of disability that I guess he never had to work again after that. And it was him and his wife, and like they had like 5 boys. And this is the kid. This is the story of the kid from. You could call him the farm boy. He was from a farm area out in the rural areas, and this court that he grew up on. So they had this court in the neighborhood, in his backyard. They had the neighborhood court, and it was one of these courts where it was asphalt, but it hadn't been redone in like 30 years. So it was really gritty and stony, and it would just tear up the balls, and it would uh the speed of the court because of this was so slow. And the funny thing is, this guy was so against the quick start. He never used he would talk trash on quick start and the balls and this and that all the time. He never claimed that he never used them for his kids, but he understood the value for in his mind for kids that weren't good enough. But regular kids, they didn't need those trash kiddie balls. And the funny thing is, when I want to go over there to watch him hit, or I'd go over there and his dad be hitting with him. As I said, this court was the slowest, grittiest court you ever played on, and all the balls he were flat. They were the flattest tennis balls. He never bought new ones, and I even saw him one time like throw in some dead balls to play for his kid to play with when he knew that his kid couldn't hang. He just throw in the dead ball. So he understood the concept, but it was kind of odd like that. But that's kind of how this guy was, his personality. Like I said, I think he had something wrong with him, even though I think he was like super smart, super cool guy. And but yeah, definitely something wrong with him in some ways. But so I remember one time I go over there and this kid didn't want to play. But he's scheduled to play me. I'm not getting paid or anything. And all I hear from this guy is, get the fuck out there. Get the fuck out there and play. And then I see this kid walking out yelling and complaining with his head down. And I'm like, oh shit, I gotta play this kid now. I kind of feel bad. And then he comes out and he actually still tries after that. He's still trying to beat me. Like he's giving like maximum effort, like he cares, after his dad forces him to go out there and play. And this same guy, he had a boxing ring. This is the guy that had a boxing ring in his basement. He probably beat the shit out of this kid. Or I don't know. I don't know if that's the case, but this kid was tough. And like I said, he had 5 brothers, and he had an older brother. That's the other thing. His older brother was the guy in the one of the videos I have, the one-hander. I think it's titled like The Harsh Reality of Tennis. The kid wanted to learn the one-hander, and he was pretty good. And I think, he probably beat up on the kid till he was like 12. And then after 12, he couldn't, I don't think he was winning anymore. But he probably stopped playing with him. He probably stopped competing against him for that reason. Uh, but that's another thing. He had this older brother and he had 5 brothers. And that's the thing what his dad would do. His dad would just go out there. And you hear this, probably heard this story before. Dad goes out there and just hits balls with the kid all the time. Because remember, he didn't work. So he had a lot of time. I'm sure he had a lot of time. And they would just go out there and hit dead tennis balls, or i.e. green balls, orange balls. But in his case, they're just dead yellow tennis balls on a super slow, gritty tennis court. And the other thing about that tennis court was, if you go over there and play, because it's kind of like farmlands. I wouldn't say it's exactly like straight farmlands, but it's not. It's probably like 25 miles from the nearest major city, and the wind just swirls on this tennis court, which is another thing. So you've heard these stories of like playing on clay is better and this and that. I don't know if that's the case, but this all these things I think come together to make this kid what he is. Uh, outside of, you could just say maybe he's born like that. Now, he did have a tennis pro. I'm not sure when he picked him up. It had to be sometime after like 13 or 14 years old. And I know this guy was from like New Orleans. So they'd always go, I remember him talking, they'd always go down to play the New Orleans State Tournament, whatever that was. And this kid would always go down there every summer and play this tournament. But he did have a tennis pro. And the tennis pro that he had was a Division two. He played Division two, and he was a 5-0 player in the area. And he was really, high level. He hit really hard and flat, and he served hard and flat, and he was very athletic. And I don't really know what he learned from this guy, to be honest. I watched him the occasional times I watched him. The guy would just bang balls at him, and I think that's why this guy liked him as a coach, because he was also known. This pro was also known to do that. To just you go over, you might see him teach some nuances and some little things here and there, but for the most part, if you watch his lesson, he's just banging balls at these kids. And he had all the advanced kids, only advanced kids, because he had a full-time job. He was only interested in working with, and he could do it because he had a full-time job. He only needed a few hours a week. So he was the advanced pro, so to speak. And then somewhere around 15, 16, he got into some trouble, and his dad wanted to straighten him out, I guess, or something like that. And so he started working. He started working at my club as a part-time coach. So what I would do is one of my ideas was I really wanted these high school kids, because you could pay them $10 an hour and they'd be happy with it. And I could have more coaches with less kids on a court. And I wanted them playing with the kids more than coaching. Now that, long story short, that doesn't really work very well, because the customers, it depends on what customers you have. They don't see it. They don't really quite understand all that. But he was coaching or working part-time at my club, and he was there all the time because his dad wanted to keep him out of trouble. So his dad was kind of making him do this. And what I noticed, this kid was ultra sensitive, and sensitive in a good way, like ultra aware, ultra sensitive to the kids. When you see some of these high school kids playing with the kids, some of them are hitting too hard, and it's like, well, you gotta slow it down. The kids, it's too hard for him, etc. But then there was him, guys like him, and there's a couple of them that they had a sense about them. They had this awareness of how hard to hit and things like that. And I think that's important to mention, because I do think that is part of the reason why players like him, or really good players, like you could even say like a Roger Federer, are able to do what they do. They have this heightened sensitivity, this awareness that they have that other people don't have. And if you've worked with people in that type of setting, you realize that not everyone's going to have that, and it's really hard to teach as well. So my club was like maybe 10 miles away from this kid's house, like country roads away from this house. And I shit you not, this kid would ride his bike. One time I caught him riding his bike home from this place. I'm like, oh, you got to get in the car, man. You can't. He's like, no, I'm fine. He was riding his bike 10 miles. 10 miles to the club and 10 miles home on back country roads. And I don't know that he didn't do it all the time. And I know that his mom, she had a van. So, because he didn't drive. Neither of them drove. The father or the kid, they didn't drive. And I'm pretty sure his mom would pick him up occasionally, when because he didn't do this all the time, but I did see his mom pick him up like halfway and whatnot. But that was just something else I noticed. I mean, to really put that into perspective, really think about that. I mean, who does that? And then on country roads, to boot, to get, you think like maybe a straight road, with a sidewalk or a bike lane or something like that in a city, but no, this is out in the country. And then talking about forehands and backhands, the other thing about this kid that I noticed was his backhand. He had a natural left hand. And I wouldn't call it a natural left hand. What I think happened was, because of, This is one of the benefits of quick start and rallying and slower balls and slower courts, is that, playing probably from 7, 8 years old to 12 years old, just hitting on these slow courts back and forth, just this pushing through with the left, always pushing through with the left. That scenario enabled him to do that consistently over a number of years. And I remember asking him, just go left-handed, and he could go left-handed instantly. And I think that's where that comes from. So that's something else to really point out, that I learned. I didn't exclusively learn it from this scenario, but I definitely would say that that's how it's done. And you look at the forehand as well. When I talk about play based only, just playing in the forehand, and just if you think a kid like that who's just always a tough, let's just call it a tough kid, where the balls are coming at you, fast enough that you're challenged and you're in rhythm, but not so fast that you're overwhelmed. When you have a father that's in tune with this, which this guy definitely was, or a coach, it's just you're constantly turning in rhythm. And this turn, if you watch his forehand, that's where his forehand comes from. I'm not going to get into the forehand. You can go watch it. That's where I think it comes from. And the same thing on the backhand, where the backhand comes from just this turn and, always having to turn on time and rhythm. And, this is something I think is hard to really teach as what coaches should do. But that's how it works. And, some people are going to get it, some people aren't. If you watch him play, that's something I noticed as well. You can see, because his technique is you might consider it kind of unique. And I would say that's where it comes from. Is there anything wrong with that? Absolutely not. I think it actually favors him. And I haven't done a video on this, but I want to talk more about the forehand and the backhand is like the signature. It's like the signature of the player, like the handwriting of the player. And for players like this guy, it's really important to keep the signature unique. You can do certain things and talk about certain things, but you want, specifically if a person has this uniqueness about them, you want to keep the signature unique, because you don't really want, ideally, you don't want other people really picking up on how you hit. I've heard this, maybe you've heard this before, like everyone's ball is different, etc. So especially like at a recreational level, or if you're not trying to like make money on tour or something like that, you're just playing different players and you're talking about winning. It's good to have this kind of like uniqueness about you, so that it takes more time for players to adapt, especially when you're hitting back and forth and rallying. So when this kid turned 17, he got to be 16, 17, 18. I don't have any video of it, but completely overpowered me, that's for sure. At that point, it wasn't like I couldn't play with him, but everything in the video that I have is sped up, etc., just expanded, and just completely if he wanted to, could overpower a player like me at that stage. So then I think he went on to play Division II, and then I'm not sure, maybe he dropped out and went to the military. So that's the end of the story. There's no tennis. There's no great tennis apex for this kid, at least at this point in history. So hope you enjoy that, and thanks for watching.